What if the greatest deception in archaeological history has been hiding in plain sight for nearly a century? In 1929, British researcher H.D. Daunt published a book that would shake the foundations of everything we thought we knew about ancient civilization. The Center of Ancient Civilization presented evidence so compelling, so meticulously documented that it should have revolutionized our understanding of human history. Instead, it was quietly buried by academic institutions, dismissed by mainstream archaeologists, and effectively erased from scholarly discourse. Daunt-fess crime wasn't poor research or unfounded speculation. It was proving that the mighty Assyrian Empire never existed in the Middle East, according to his findings. The civilization we've been taught ruled from modern-day Iraq actually flourished thousands of miles away, in what we now call Central and South America. The implications of Daunt's research extend far beyond simple geographic confusion. If ancient Assyria was located in the Americas, then everything we've been taught about the development of human civilization is fundamentally wrong. The supposed isolation of the New World from Old World civilizations becomes a carefully constructed lie. The timeline of human migration, the development of writing systems, and the very foundations of archaeological methodology crumble under the weight of evidence that has been systematically suppressed for nearly a century. Daunt's career before this revolutionary discovery had been exemplary and conventional. He held advanced degrees from Cambridge University, had conducted respected archaeological surveys in Egypt and Palestine, and had published numerous papers that contributed to mainstream understanding of ancient Middle Eastern civilizations. His academic credentials were impeccable, his methodology rigorous, and his reputation among colleagues sterling. This background makes the subsequent treatment of his Assyrian research all the more suspicious and revealing of institutional corruption. Daunt's investigation began with a simple observation that had troubled scholars for generations but never received satisfactory explanation. Ancient Assyrian texts describe military campaigns conducted by King Asurnasirpal II that involved visits to both the Sea of the Rising Sun and the Sea of the Setting Sun during a single military expedition. Traditional interpretations place these bodies of water as the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea, but Daunt recognized an insurmountable geographic problem with this explanation. The distance between the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean Sea is approximately 1,200 miles of difficult terrain, including mountain ranges, deserts, and hostile territories. For an ancient army to travel this distance during a single campaign while conducting active military operations would have required months of travel and enormous logistical support. More significantly, the Persian Gulf lies to the south of ancient Mesopotamia, not to the east, making the designation Sea of the Rising Sun geographically impossible from any position within the supposed Assyrian heartland. Daunt's analysis revealed that no location in the traditional Middle Eastern homeland of Assyria could provide access to both eastern and western seas within the time frame described in ancient texts. The geographic constraints simply do not support the narrative that mainstream archaeology has insisted upon for over 2 centuries. This fundamental impossibility forced Daunt to consider an alternative interpretation that academic institutions were unprepared to accept. The breakthrough in Daunt's research came when he shifted his focus from the Middle East to Central America, specifically the region around modern-day Panama. Here, he discovered, the geographic requirements described in ancient Assyrian texts align perfectly with the natural landscape. From elevated positions near the Panama Canal Zone, both the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea are visible and accessible within distances that could realistically be covered during a single military campaign. The region contains numerous elevated positions where both oceans can be observed simultaneously, most notably from the summit of Volcano Baru, Panama's highest peak at over 11,000 feet above sea level. On clear days, both the Pacific Ocean to the west and the Caribbean Sea to the east are visible from this vantage point, creating precisely the geographic situation described in ancient Assyrian campaign records. A Sea of the Rising Sun and Sea of the Setting Sun become logical designations for bodies of water that could indeed be visited during a single expedition. Daunt's field investigations in Panama revealed additional evidence that traditional archaeology had overlooked or deliberately ignored. Ancient roadways constructed with massive stone blocks in distinctly Mesopotamian style crisscross the region, connecting elevated ceremonial centers that follow classic Assyrian urban planning principles. These roads show evidence of supporting heavy-wheel traffic, yet traditional American archaeology insists that pre-Columbian cultures never developed practical wheeled transportation. The architectural evidence becomes even more compelling when examined in detail. Stone-cutting techniques found throughout the Panama Canal region match precisely those used in authenticated Assyrian sites in Iraq. The specific angles used for beveling edges, the mathematical proportions of foundation stones, and the sophisticated water management systems all demonstrate technological continuity that cannot be explained by independent development or cultural diffusion across vast oceanic distances. Astronomical alignments of ceremonial structures in the region correspond exactly with star charts described in ancient Assyrian astronomical texts. These alignments would be impossible to achieve without detailed knowledge of Assyrian mathematical and astronomical systems, suggesting direct cultural transmission rather than coincidental similarity. The precision of these alignments exceeds what would be expected from primitive cultures, supposedly isolated from Old World learning. But Daunt's evidence extended far beyond simple geographic alignment. His comprehensive research uncovered a systematic pattern of place names, cultural practices, and architectural styles that connected ancient Assyrian descriptions with archaeological sites throughout Central and South America. The correlation was not superficial but detailed and specific, involving elements of urban planning, religious practices, and administrative systems that showed remarkable consistency with ancient Mesopotamian civilization. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence Daunt presented involved the ancient Assyrian references to the Island of Seven Kings, a mysterious location that had puzzled scholars for generations. Traditional archaeology had failed to identify any Mediterranean or Persian Gulf island that matched the detailed descriptions found in Assyrian royal chronicles. The island was described as lying to the west of the empire, as furthest territories and containing unique wildlife unlike any found in known Mesopotamian lands. Daunt's investigation led him to the Galápagos Islands, located approximately 600 miles west of Ecuador. Early Spanish maps and indigenous oral traditions consistently refer to 7 principal islands within this archipelago, matching exactly the 7 kings described in ancient Assyrian texts. The unique fauna of the Galápagos, including giant tortoises, marine iguanas, and flightless cormorants, corresponds precisely with ancient descriptions of the mysterious creatures found on the legendary Island of Seven Kings, the wildlife. Descriptions in ancient Assyrian texts include animals that could not possibly have existed in the Middle East or Mediterranean region but are endemic to South American ecosystems. References to shell-backed giants match perfectly with Galapagos giant tortoises, while descriptions of swimming lizards correspond exactly with marine iguanas found nowhere else in the world. These biological impossibilities in traditional interpretations become logical and accurate when viewed through the lens of Daunt's groundbreaking American location theory. Archaeological evidence supporting Daunt's revolutionary thesis extends throughout the proposed Assyrian territories in Central and South America. Massive stone constructions exhibiting classic Mesopotamian architectural principles have been discovered from Guatemala to Peru, featuring the same mathematical proportions, ceremonial layouts, and defensive configurations found in traditionally accepted Assyrian ruins. The precision of these constructions, involving megalithic stones fitted without mortar in techniques identical to ancient Mesopotamian methods, suggests cultural continuity rather than independent development. Linguistic evidence provides additional strong support for Daunt's revolutionary theory. Ancient languages throughout Central and South America contain root words and grammatical structures that show unmistakable connections to Akkadian, the language of ancient Assyria. Traditional linguistics dismisses these similarities as coincidental, but Daunt's analysis revealed systematic patterns that indicate direct cultural transmission rather than random correspondence. The suppression of Daunt's research began almost immediately after publication of his groundbreaking findings. Academic journals refused to publish peer reviews of his work, claiming his methodology was unorthodox and his conclusions unsupported by established archaeological frameworks. Universities that had initially shown interest in his research suddenly withdrew funding and academic support. Colleagues who had praised his preliminary findings publicly distanced themselves from the completed work. The campaign against Daunt's research was coordinated and systematic, involving major archaeological institutions throughout Europe and North America. Academic conferences refused to allow presentations of his findings, scholarly societies declined membership applications, and research grants were denied without explanation. The archaeological establishment's response was swift and decisive. Daunt's work was to be marginalized and forgotten. But the suppression extended beyond simple academic politics. Copies of The Center of Ancient Civilization began disappearing from university libraries and research collections. Requests for the book through academic channels were met with claims that it had never been properly cataloged or had been damaged beyond repair. Within a decade of its publication, Daunt's groundbreaking research had been effectively erased from mainstream archaeological discourse. The motivations for suppressing Daunt's findings become clear when we consider the implications of accepting his evidence. If ancient Assyria existed in the Americas, then the entire framework of human civilization development requires fundamental revision. The supposed superiority of Old World civilizations over New World cultures collapses when we realize they were actually the same civilizations. The colonial narrative that justified European domination of the Americas loses its historical foundation. Moreover, Daunt's research calls into question the reliability of archaeological dating methods and geographic interpretations that form the basis of modern historical scholarship. If such a fundamental error could persist for centuries in one of archaeology's most studied civilizations, what other aspects of ancient history might be completely wrong? The academic establishment's credibility would suffer irreparable damage if Daunt's findings gained widespread acceptance. Modern archaeological expeditions in Central and South America have consistently uncovered evidence that supports Daunt's American Assyria theory, but this evidence is systematically reinterpreted to fit existing paradigms rather than challenge them. Massive stone constructions are attributed to local indigenous cultures despite showing clear Mesopotamian design principles. Advanced metallurgy and astronomical knowledge are dismissed as independent developments rather than evidence of cultural continuity with ancient Assyrian civilization. Recent satellite surveys of the Panama Canal region have revealed extensive buried structures that match the layout patterns described in ancient Assyrian city plans. Ground-penetrating radar has identified massive foundations beneath areas previously assumed to contain only natural formations. However, access to these sites for detailed archaeological investigation has been restricted by government agencies claiming environmental protection concerns. The digital age has provided new opportunities to examine Daunt's evidence through advanced analytical techniques unavailable in 1929. Computer modeling of ancient Assyrian campaign routes using Panamanian geography produces logically consistent military strategies, while similar modeling using Middle Eastern geography results in impossible logistical scenarios. Linguistic analysis software has identified over 200 direct correlations between ancient Assyrian words and indigenous Central American languages, a statistical impossibility if the civilizations were truly separate. Despite mounting evidence supporting Daunt's thesis, mainstream archaeology continues to reject any discussion of American Assyria. Academic journals automatically reject papers that reference Daunt's work. Researchers who pursue similar investigations find their careers systematically derailed, and educational institutions maintain curricula that perpetuate the Middle Eastern location myth. The suppression that began in 1929 continues today with even greater sophistication and coordination. The implications of accepting Daunt's evidence extend beyond archaeology into geopolitics and resource control. If ancient Assyrian territories were located in Central and South America, and oil deposits, mineral rights, and archaeological treasures currently claimed by Middle Eastern nations might belong to Latin American countries, the economic consequences of such revelations could destabilize international agreements and resource allocation systems that have operated for over a century. International archaeological organizations have developed elaborate protocols to prevent independent investigation of sites that might support Daunt's thesis. Research permits for potentially relevant locations are systematically denied. Funding for American Assyria investigations is blocked through bureaucratic procedures, and academic careers are destroyed for researchers who persist in pursuing forbidden evidence. The conspiracy to maintain the Middle Eastern Assyria myth operates at the highest levels of international scholarship and government policy. Intelligence agencies have taken active roles in suppressing evidence that supports Daunt's findings. Archaeological expeditions that discover artifacts inconsistent with accepted historical narratives find their evidence confiscated under national security provisions. Researchers who attempt to publish findings that support American Assyria theory face legal harassment, funding cuts, and professional ostracism that effectively silences further investigation. The technology exists today to definitively prove or disprove Daunt's thesis through comprehensive archaeological surveys of proposed American Assyrian sites. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced dating techniques could provide conclusive evidence within months of properly funded investigation. However, the academic and political establishments that control access to these technologies have no interest in challenging their own foundational narratives. What other civilizations have been deliberately mislocated to maintain historical narratives that serve political purposes? How many archaeological discoveries have been suppressed because they contradict accepted theories that support existing power structures? And why does the academic establishment continue to reject evidence that could revolutionize our understanding of human civilization development? The answers lie buried not just in Central American soil, but in the archives and private collections of institutions that have spent nearly a century ensuring that H.D. Daunt's revolutionary discoveries remain hidden from public knowledge. The truth about ancient Assyria, as American location, waits for researchers brave enough to challenge the archaeological orthodoxy that has controlled historical narrative since 1929. Every time we look at a map of the ancient world, we're seeing a carefully constructed fiction designed to support political and academic interests rather than historical truth. The real history of human civilization remains locked away, accessible only to those who control the institutions that decide which evidence is acceptable and which discoveries must be forgotten. The ghost of H.D. Daunt's suppressed research continues to haunt the archaeological establishment, a constant reminder that their foundational assumptions rest on geographic impossibilities and systematic evidence suppression rather than scholarly investigation and logical analysis. Ready to expose all the secret knowledge they've kept from humanity for millennia? Determined to destroy the lies we've been spoon-fed about our true past? Then become part of this resistance network. Hit that subscribe button hard, record everything you uncover, and let's track down these hidden realities together. The evidence stays locked behind barriers of lies and institutional control. But together as investigators, we possess the strength to expose their most guarded mysteries to the entire world.